Good morning. So, over the last few days, I've had a few people ask me, do you think this is the end? Is this the second coming of Christ? Is this Revelation all starting to come true, the book of Revelation? To which I guess I really have to answer, well, I don't know. But I will say this. Jesus, in his own words, he said, on that day when I come back, nobody is going to know. Not the angels in heaven. Even I don't know the day that I'm going to come back. Only the Father knows. And he goes on to say that on that final day, it'll be just like in the days of Noah, where people were just oblivious to what was going to be happening. They were marrying, they were eating, they were going to jobs, they were going shopping, they were just doing their day-to-day regular things. And then all of a sudden the flood came, and it took them all by surprise. They had no idea that this was coming. They didn't prepare. Because they thought that, the way things are is the way that things will always continue to be and the way that things always have been. And Jesus said, understand this. If you're a homeowner and you know that there's a thief coming, you'll be prepared for that thief, and the thief won't be successful. And essentially, what he said is you always have to be ready. You always have to be ready for that thing to come. And that's really the story of the flood is certainly that people were just not paying any attention at all. So the long and short of it is that we don't know when Jesus is coming back, but we ought to be prepared for it. We ought to be ready all the time. So what does it mean to be prepared? To me, the word righteousness comes to mind. And I don't mean by that that we have a holier than thou attitude, that we're all like some super ascetic monks and nuns or anything like that. But by righteousness, I mean being in right relationship. So right relationship with God, that we're not taken by surprise. I think of Daniel. Daniel, when he was thrown into the lion's den, when you have a whole bunch of hungry lions facing you, you don't have a lot of time to establish a relationship with God and start praying. But with Daniel, really, he just opened his mouth and God responded. And that was because Daniel already had a very good relationship with God. He spent lots of time in prayer. He spent lots of time listening and obeying and doing what he should have been doing. So that in that moment of crisis, he really only had to open his mouth and boom, God is there. The same thing goes with each other too, that we want to maintain right relationships with each other. We don't want to be carrying on a feud with somebody. We certainly don't want to have our last words to our wife or child to be something negative, something condemning. So we want to be prepared. And we do that, I think, through right relationships with God and with one another. And beyond that, it's actually unprofitable for us to try and determine when that final hour is, to try and read the signs. Because certainly over the time since the Bible has been written, there have been lots of wars and famines and pestilence and death. And those four horsemen, they're already loose on the world. They're already running rampant. So we see all the time with people trying to match up what it says in Revelation or in Daniel to current events and saying, this is it, this is it, this is the time. But I think that it's not profitable for us to try and do any of that, because ultimately what ends up happening is if we make the prediction and we're wrong, then the next time we try and make the prediction, we have less faith in it. And eventually we get to the point where we think, well, maybe Jesus isn't coming back. Now, I don't really know about any of that stuff, but I do know this, that if we live our lives preparing as though Jesus is going to come back at any moment, then at the very least, we're going to be in a right relationship with reality, with God. We're going to be in a right relationship with each other. And when Jesus does show, we're not going to be taken by surprise, and we're not going to be panicking and scrambling and hoarding toilet paper or whatever we need to do to get ready for God. So the message is this: be prepared all the time. Don't wait for a disaster to make you start thinking that you need to get ready to meet God. We should always be meeting God.